Welcome to Joy News Prime with me, Samuel Kojo. Brace coming up this hour. Parliament forced to pay 8.5 million cedis out of its indebtedness to the Electricity Company of Ghana as the company recovers some 5.7 billion cedis owed by customers.
We visited Parliament House. They were owing about 13 million. They've committed to paying 8 million by close of the 8.5 million Ghana cedis. We saw evidence of that.
National Chairman of the Opposition NDC tears into President Akufo-Addo's State of the Nation address, arguing that the president is not living or is not alive to current affairs. Now, the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, says its preliminary investigation into the death of 5 people on Lake Volta points to negligence of the boat owner. Details as the owner of the boat remains in police custody as the search for possible survivors continue. Now, Parliament on Monday was compelled to make part payment of its indebtedness to the Electricity Company of Ghana. Now, the House paid 8.5 million out of 13 million cedis owed the power distributor to avert disconnection from the national grid. Now, the National Task Force of ECG recovered 18.5 million owned by 3 state institutions on day 1 of the company's nationwide exercise to recover some 5.7 billion cedis owed by customers. Now, the 18.5 million is part of some 46.9 million owed by Parliament, the Ghana Airport Company, and the state broadcaster, the National Broadcasting Company Corporation, GBC. My colleague Joseph Akwesi Aveji was with the team and asked more in the following report.
This has been day 1 of the Electricity Company of Ghana's national exercise to try and recoup some 5.7 billion Ghana cedis from both state and private enterprises who have been owing the ECG in bills. Now, the day 1, which part of it was handled by the National Task Force of the Electricity Company of Ghana, visited some 3 institutions. First, we went to the Parliament of Ghana, where we were told Parliament is owing over 13 million Ghana cedis. Now, the team got to Parliament and then met a bit of resistance from the officials in Parliament not to disconnect the lawmaking house. It led into a meeting between the 2 parties, who went into a meeting for about 30 minutes, came back, and then we were told that the Parliament has agreed to pay 8.5 million Ghana cedis upfront. The team moved to the Ghana Airport Company, met with another fierce resistance from the security agencies. But at the end of the day, an agreement was reached. Laila Abubakari is the manager communications affairs at the Electricity Company of Ghana, giving us some more details from those 2 institutions.
The National Task Force is the one that is in charge of our state-owned enterprises, the ministries, departments and agencies under the ministry. And so we have been going with them today. We visited Parliament House. They were owing about 13 million. They've committed to paying 8 million by close of the 8.5 million Ghana cedis. We saw evidence of that. And then we went to the Ghana Airport Company. They owed an arrears of 28 million Ghana cedis, of which they made 10 million Ghana cedis payment instant just when we got them. So we're giving them 48 hours to make the full payment.
We moved to the state broadcaster, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, where we've been told that they owe to the tune of some 5.9 million Ghana cedis, which was also in arrears. Now, the GBC, we have been told, have been paying their current bills as well, leading to a meeting between the 2 parties where they judged on what to do. The position of the GBC is that in fact the amount was more than the 5.9 million Ghana cedis, but as at last year, government paid some 17 million Ghana cedis out of the entire arrears, leaving some 5.9 million cedis behind, which the ECG want to collect or the state broadcaster will be put off.
They have explained to us that because of the way they run their operations, they wouldn't be able to cough out the money for us instantly. They've had some discussions with their minister, the Minister of Information, and then the National Media Commission, together with the Ministry of Energy. And there was some sort of agreement last year. However, ECG's point is that there hasn't been any movement on the debt that is remaining. They have explained to us that they have a system, they are going to get some money and then pay, because they have to find innovative ways of coming up with the money. And so we've been given permission to leave them for now for 48 hours. We need to see some movement on that 6 million Ghana cedi debt. So now that they have, some of them have defaulted and we are going after our monies, they will be served letters accordingly. When the task force disconnects, they just don't leave. They leave something behind so that if you need to reach someone, you're able to make contact with the team and then make payment appropriately. And with that, there's a time on it. It's stated clearly in the letter. If you default on the time, then we can start a legal process against you, because we also need to pay our bills.
The three institutions we visited were all state-owned agencies, owing in a total of 46.9 million Ghana cedis. Now, about 18.5 have been recouped from that. The exercise resumes tomorrow, Tuesday, with visit to some other state-owned agencies. Reporting for Joy News, my name is James Kwesi Aveji.
Dr. Steve Mantera is policy analyst with the Integrated Social Development Center, ISODEC, and he joins us on phone. Now, Doc, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us. Now, 18.5 million on day one. Good enough?
Yes, compared to what is owed, one would say it's a drop in the ocean. But for me, it's a very encouraging beginning. For as long as ECG is able to sustain this initiative, I'm pretty sure that the company will get somewhere.
Doc, there are institutions on the list that are serial defaulters. What can the ECG do to make them cough up this money?
I think that is exactly what they are doing. I mean, the threat of disconnection and the public embarrassment that comes with it. I want to believe that you are referring to the Ghana Airport Company. Yes, indeed, last year, ECG disconnected them and got them to pay something. And so the fact that they've gone back there again to collect whatever is outstanding, for me, is what I refer to as sustainable approach to revenue collection. You don't sleep and wait for debt to accumulate. And so I want to believe that from time to time, we'll be following up on the Ghana Airport Company, other serial and defaulters, so that we can collect all the money we owe. I think we, as the ordinary consumers, should be supporting this initiative of ECG, because we are the end beneficiaries of this aggressive debt collection. Commercial losses are partly to blame for the high tariffs you and I pay to ECG, because they are all built into the tariff structure. And so if ECG can reduce the commercial losses, then it comes back to also reduce tariffs in the long run. Again, if ECG can reduce commercial losses, then it is able to invest in the technical side, that is equipment renewal, replacement of old transformers, etc., to bring about efficiency and reduce the number of times power may have to go up for maybe faulty machines or for reasons of power trips and the rest. And so what ECG is doing is what any serious business should do to be able to remain in business. And I think we ought to give them all the support they need.
Now, to close national, regional, and district offices of the company to chase, debtors, people have raised the issue about sustainability of this exercise. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think the communication around the closure of ECG officers has been misunderstood.
Okay.
My check confirmed to me that all the customer service centers of ECG will remain open. It is the administrative and technical staff who will be deployed to support this ambitious revenue mobilization exercise. So all those who need to buy power credits and people who may have some challenges with their power services and all that will be able to get the ECG to attend to that. I'm reliably informed that even on the technical side, some skeletal tasks will be maintained to deal with emergencies. And so to the extent that what we are doing is in the general good and towards the improvement of the service that we enjoy, I think that we'll have to cope with whatever little inconveniences that may arise. We want to be able to mobilize to improve services. We all know that government doesn't have the resources to build the company up and out. So the company will have to do what it has to do to survive. And I think we should lend them that support.
All right, grateful to you, Dr. Steve Mantel there. Naturally, our membership is deeply disappointed by the finance minister's failure to pay coupons and matured principals of pensioner bondholders exempted from the domestic debt exchange program. Now, that is our other sentiment of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum over what they say is a deviation from the market dictate for the treatment of holders of exempted bonds. Specifically, they say their concerns are focused on the delayed timing and payment of overdue coupons and principals to pensioner bondholders. In February this year, the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, gave the assurance that government will honor its obligations to bondholders who opted not to be part of the domestic debt exchange program. Ms. Ofori-Atta gave the assurance at a joint press briefing with the Pensioner Bondholders Forum in Accra in February. But the bondholders revealed government is backtracking on its own promise. Let's share with you part of the statement that they released on this. Now, the Ministry of Finance exempted all pensioner bondholders per 8 letter on 15 February 2023. When they issue a grant exemption to bondholders, it effectively reaffirms that it has no financial challenges whatsoever in meeting the coupon and principal payment on such exempted bond. The government extended the settlement date of the exchange from the previously announced 14th February 2023 to 21st February 2023 to provide sufficient time to settle new bonds. The statement continues that it was expected that on the settlement day, government was going to pay coupons and principals that were due and payable. Government did not pay and nothing was heard from the ministry. After meeting the Minister of Finance on 27th February 2023, the ministry indicated that it was taking administrative steps to ensure that payment of coupons and principals of the owed bonds resumed by 13th March 2023. Now, it says that by close of business on 13th March 2023, the ministry had not made any payment, compelling us to come out with a press release on 14th March 2023 to register our disappointment. The ministry came out with a press release the same day that affirmed that the ministry had given instruction for the payment of coupons and principals of bonds that matured on 6th February 2023 and coupons due on 13th February 2023. Now, holders of the bonds were to expect to receive their payment within the next 48 hours. We wish to confirm that pensioners have since Wednesday, 15th March 2023, been receiving coupon and principal payment. We, however, wish to reiterate that pensioners were exempted from the DDEP and consequently must always be paid their coupons and principals on due date without delay and in the same manner as was done prior to the DDEP. Now, the statement continues to say that the ministry should take immediate steps to pay pensioners all their outstanding coupons and matured principals as at 20th March 2023 and pay all subsequent coupons and matured principals religiously on due date. If the anomaly situation was or we are complaining about persist, we shall be left with no other option than to explore other means of getting resolution to the situation. Now, in relation to that, government is also preparing itself for what it says will be a make or break week as Ghana races against time to secure the much needed IMF board agreement before the end of the month. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is attending two crucial meetings, first with China and the second with the Paris Club as part of Ghana's external debt restructuring plan. Now, joining us on Zoom is Professor Godfred Bokping, an economist and finance professor at the University of Ghana. Prof, I'm grateful to you for joining us here. Now, first, let me start with you on what the Pensioner Bondholders Forum has put out today. Was this happening something you expected?
I wouldn't say I've been entirely surprised because government posture from day one seemed to suggest that if you didn't tender, you didn't swap your old bonds for the new ones, you were going to be punished in one way or the other. You could get that from the body language and all of that. But I want to believe that the pension holders persisted. And I think they got what they wanted, to the extent that the Ministry of Finance issued a statement to exempt them following their persistence. The ministry had no justifiable reason to delay payment. The reason I'm saying so is that, look, it is in the best interest of government that we calm the system and begin to rebuild. How do we build forward better and inclusively? So remember that the domestic debt exchange really has impacted our financial sector. So now that we are done, every step that we take should inure to the inclusive rebuilding of our economy. And that is where I am worried, because if we focus all our time that we need to get the IMF program, yes, that is important, but you need to do what you have to do in your domestic economy in building confidence and trust. What unsettles me in all of this is that we are having one too many U-turns, right? And for me, it's a bit concerning because you see, managing the economy, you also want to manage the expectations. So that if government says X, I should not take that to mean X bar, okay? If government says that they are going to make payment on this date, I mean, even if government wasn't going to keep that, there should be a proactive communication to inform the market. Okay, so what is going on is not good overall in building policy credibility. Okay, because remember that even if we get the IMF program, that alone will not be sufficient to engineer inclusive economic recovery. Okay, Prof. So and the fact that it's happening to pensioners, I think the way we treat our pensioners and the vulnerable and the socially excluded, all that we are doing typifies our lack of appreciation and respect for the aged, the vulnerable, the socially excluded, the marginalized. And I think that is not good.
Prof, on the part of the minister meeting with the Chinese counterpart as well as the Paris Club, you predicted last year that it wasn't possible that government was going to secure that deal by close of 2022 and that you expect that we could get an IMF staff deal. We got it. Now, on this meeting, what are your expectations?
There are so many factors that are outside the control of government. Okay, and that's what makes it a bit challenging now. We had hoped that we're going to get the IMF program by the end of Q1, quarter one. Okay, and the president himself, during the State of the Nation address, told us we're going to get that. But looking at what has happened, looking at the dynamics, the global geopolitics and all of that, it looks realistically to me that we should be looking at somewhere May, thereabouts. More so because there are certain prior actions that we needed to secure. And this time round, it's not about publication of COVID-19 audit report that has been done. We've also seen some steps in the area of utility adjustment. So now if you see ECG all over the place, remember that the program is going to be heavy on some of these adjustments in the energy sector. Because if you look at the 2023 budget alone, there's now a line item for energy sector indebtedness. In the next 3 years, it's over 70 billion cedis. Okay, so it tells you that that's a big hole that has to be closed. But the real issue now is that how can Ghana get assurances from our development partners, bilateral especially, that they will commit to close the funding gap? Typically, the funding gap could be closed from two main sources, either through debt relief or assurance of fresh funding. Okay, and so far, if you look at the framework that the IMF would prefer, the G20 framework, it appears that China is not comfortable, right, under such framework and all of that. And also, if you look at our indebtedness to China, really, it's not something that will break our back. So from day one, if we had done our assessments well, and this is something that I think government needs to take another, there should be a clear strategy.
Okay. Okay.
There should be a clear strategy from step 1 to step 2 and all of that. What is our plan B? We need to do all those stakeholder mapping in all this journey to securing an IMF program so that the president doesn't use the State of the Nation address to tell us that we are going to get a program by the end of March.
Okay.
Okay. And it turns out to be the opposite. It is not good overall. So I think that so far, the indications are that we are going to miss the March deadline, and probably we should be looking at May, hoping that. But once we've said that, Ghana itself hasn't done anything from fiscal adjustment or expenditure side to merit any country to do extraordinary for us. I mean, how do you expect that to happen?
Okay. Prof, on that question, just 30 seconds. On what you've just said, what do you expect China and the Paris Club to do on the fact that we haven't done anything on our own part?
I think that we know that from the Paris Club creditors, they are more willing. But also, if you look at the composition of the debt stock, you could see that we owe so much to China relative to the other Paris Club creditors. So if the framework is such that they must all forgive, then it's easier for someone to forgive because he's forgiving so less, while somebody is forgiving so much. But then you also want to look at it within national policies and orientations, right? Japan, China, are they really interested in debt forgiveness or probably restructuring?
So do you expect them to forgive us? Do you expect them to forgive us?
In fact, from where I sit, personally, I think that Ghana should not be begging for debt forgiveness from China. $1.5 billion should not be the reason why Ghana cannot get an IMF program.
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right.
I think that we have to be responsible as a nation after 66 years of independence with all that we have. No.
Prof, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us here. Dr. Anani Entry has been with us since we started. Doc is the convener for the Bondholders Forum. I'm grateful to you for joining us, Doc. What is informing your fears of government not honoring the payment of bonds due?
Well, thank you. I think that we have already, on the 14th, we came out with a statement that the government was supposed to pay coupons and maturing principals after the close of the settlement day, which was 21st of February. We waited until 27th of February. We haven't heard anything, and we had to go to the ministry with the other two groups to find answers to the delay. That same day, the ministry came out with a statement that it had instructed that the payments should start, but that they were going to do for only two coupons and maturity values that were due on the 6th February and coupons on the 13th February. Meanwhile, at the time that the government was making that statement, there were other coupons and principals that has matured. One of the principals matured on the 20th of February, and the other one matured on the 6th of March. There were other coupons too that were due around the same period. But the government said he has given instruction for only the 6th and the 13th February, which means the others were still outstanding, and government said it was going to announce in due course when that payment was going to be made. And we realized that no, that is not how you have to treat pensioners who have been exempted from the program. Once exempted, the affirmation is that you reaffirm that despite the economic challenges that you are having, for the exempted bondholders, you don't have an issue with them, and you continue to pay regularly as you have been doing. That is the meaning of the issuer exemption that I continue to explain, that they are not in the finance textbooks, but that is the practice. Once you, as the issuer exempt you, the issuer has said, you don't come nearer to where my problem is. You don't have a problem. You can go and sleep. When you wake up and it is due day, just go and check your accounts and it will be there. That is the issuer exemption status that government has granted us. So we are saying that you can't grant us this status and treat us otherwise. So please pay all the arrears and start paying as they become due. If any of the bonds maturity becomes due, if any of the coupons become due in the hands of the pensioner bondholders, pay as you have been paying before the DDG program came about.
There were enough writings on the wall that the state was in a challenge. The money to pay you was going to be a difficulty. So how much of a time were you willing to give the state to be able to settle you when your bonds become due?
Well, we said that once the state has to take all things into consideration before granting us. Once the state has granted that option, that exemption, then we believe the state knows where to find the money to pay. Of course, these days, if you are even an ordinary debtor, treasury bill rate has come down. So if you are borrowing to pay off bonds that are priced higher than the T-bills, that is good for you. So the treasury bill market is there. It's always oversubscribed. Government takes what it thinks it needs. If government needed money to pay us and it doesn't have, you would have taken more of the treasury bill loans that people were trying to give to government. So I believe government has money. If government didn't have money, it would have taken more of the treasury bills, because the treasury bills are there for government, and the rates that you are borrowing is lower than the rate that you are the bonds that you are retiring.
Okay. Doc, will you picket at the ministry again in demand of the government honoring those promises?
I believe the government will not allow that thing to happen again. What happened was created a bad image for the nation. It was not even the time that we were struggling for independence that you saw elderly picketing. So it wasn't a good thing to do. Again,
so is it something you would employ if they don't honor those payments?
If we are pushed to the wall, and that is what, but we don't think we will be pushed to the wall. I think government has come to realize that it was not a good thing to have allowed.
Okay.
So we believe, as we are pointing out to government, they will do the needful so that these things will not happen again.
Doc, I'm grateful that you could join us here. Dr. Anani is convener for the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. Now, welcome back from the break. Now, the national chairman of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, has torn into the President Akufo-Addo's State of the Nation address, describing it as empty and full of rhetorics. Now, delivering what the NDC says is the true state of affairs of the country, Asiedu Nketia labeled the government as a failure that has borrowed Ghana into a crisis and wondered why the president is not taking responsibility.
Brothers and sisters, it is obvious that President Akufo-Addo, who continues to reveal in the largesse of high office, does not appreciate the present-day reality of the Ghanaian people. The president continues to live in his own world, far removed from yours and mine. that he fails or neglects to appreciate the true state of the nation. It is absolutely important to awaken President Akufo-Addo and the ruling MPP to the uncomfortable but frank true state of Ghana today. A nation of many living in fear of where to find their next meal, leaving many parents to endure sleepless nights. The true state of our dear nation no longer lies in flowery speeches laced with political chicanery that never accept responsibility for anything. Neither does it lie in the abstract theories that blame personal feelings on events that have no significant impact on our lives.
The president and his government have always labeled the current economic crisis on the course of the COVID-19 and also the war in Ukraine. But Johnson Asiedu Nketia says that cannot be true because these phenomena have not affected Ghana that much and cannot be the cause of the current challenges.
Cote d'Ivoire recorded a deficit of 5.6%. Nigeria recorded a deficit of 5.8%, and Senegal recorded a deficit of 6.4%. But Ghana alone recorded a deficit of 15.7% because of the reckless election-driven expenses and wastage the Akufo-Addo-Bawumia MPP government engaged. My brothers and sisters, did COVID-19 affect Ghana any more than it did to our neighbors? How come none of these countries who were all affected by the pandemic are recording double-digit deficits and high debt-to-GDP ratio of over 100%? How come none of these countries are recording inflation rates of over 50% like Ghana? How come none of this has defaulted on their debt repayments? How can none of them has been downgraded to junk status and have been locked out of the international capital market? How come none of these countries are going through a domestic debt restructuring? How come none of these countries are visiting cruel financial haircuts on their citizens, including pensioners? How come none of these countries are experiencing childhood vaccine shortages? To paraphrase Dr. Bawumia, how did COVID-19 jump over Nigeria, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, and other neighbors of ours to attack and destroy only Ghana's economy?
Meanwhile, some stalwart of the party who were at the event have described the speech or the address by their party chairman as one that truly reflects the true state of the country.
You know, the MPP has been engaged in this deceptive thing for too long. And we have said it that, look, if the statistics they've been churning out all over the years were true, it would have reflected positively in the lives of the people. Because we said that the sweetness of the pudding lies in the eating. Now today Ghanaians have sampled and tested the MPP and they can see the difference. And so we manifest it in the clear everyday life of the people. It's just only for that. A bowl of KK we sold for 1 cedi just in 2016, now sells for between 4 to 5 cedis.
If you have a leader who is lying about the real cause of the problem, who refuses to acknowledge that all over the sub-region, all over Africa, other countries are doing very well compared to us, who refuses to accept that no country is facing the kind of crisis we are facing in our sub-region. Obviously, from that premise, you can see already that it's a leader who does not want to tell the truth. In fact, I would say that we should be looking forward to you in the media becoming a bulwark, to stop what I call the serial deception that is going on in this country. Somehow, leaving this to be a battle between NDC and MPP makes it difficult for us to see what the truth is.
To other stories now, the National Disaster Management Organization says its initial probe into the incident on the Volta Lake points to negligence of the boat owner. A spokesperson, George A.C., says the suspect remains in police custody as the search for possible survivors continue. Now, the accident occurred when the affected persons were traveling on Saturday from Azizanya to Azizakpe in the Adan constituency for a funeral. It is unclear how many people were on the boat, but it can be told that at least 5 bodies have been retrieved. We'll be hearing from NADMO, Director of Communications, in a moment, but first, here are some eyewitnesses.
I am Rosemary. We came for a funeral at our youth organization. Then the boat we were on board capsized. This happened close to the estuary. People are stuck in the water. We need help. There was a strong wind that caused this. Please help us. Some of them are with their children. Some are alone. They all fell into the water.
We can now hear from the Director of Communications for the NADMO, George A.C.
We've lost about 5 people, young kids and 2 adults. Police, the Navy, and the Assembly and NADMO, of course, have gone to the place. We are all aware that the owner of the boat has been arrested for overloading the boat. It has a capacity of between 40 to 45, and from the report, they've loaded over 90 to 95. We understand passengers cautioned the owners that, look, this is overloaded, but they didn't pay heed, and then they went on their journey. Unfortunately, we have this report that people were rescued. Some were taken to clinics to be treated and then discharged. Others, upon when they are rescued, they move to their communities. They are from different communities in the area, so they've gone home and others. So that is the situation as of now. We have not abandoned search yet. I understand the search is actually ongoing, hoping that whether they will still find survivors. But from the report so far, it's like those who were in the water were rescued, apart from the 5 that lost their lives, almost everybody. But they are still doing the search because there were a lot of children on board that's what the report is saying. So maybe by close of today or tomorrow, before they will then decide that we've finished with the search. But search is still ongoing for survivors. If a boat has a capacity of 45, 40, and you load over 90, 95, definitely you are being reckless and irresponsible. And so definitely that will be part. And the wind, the stormy nature water may be a contributing factor. But because you were negligent and wasn't responsible from the get-go, definitely we can take that out of whatever natural event that occurs and brings this situation about.
Now, residents of Duapompo in the Jobin municipality of the Ashanti region are now relieved after emergency service providers evacuated a tanker loaded with liquefied petroleum gas from their community. Now, for 9 days, the residents lived in fear, with some self-evacuating their homes in fear of a possible explosion. They were banned from lighting naked fire, and some people had to leave their homes. Now, my colleague Ohimintea report of a thunderous applause in the community after the removal of the tanker from the accident scene.
Monday marks exactly 10 days since the gas tanker was involved in the road accident. Some residents of Duapompo had to leave their homes and could not start a naked fire close to the accident scene. Cooking at homes became challenging. On Monday, emergency service workers spent several hours providing fire cover in an attempt to remove the gas tanker from the scene. The main Kumasi-Accra road had to be blocked to traffic at the inconvenience of motorists and the traveling public. Konongo Municipal Fire Commander DO3 Richard Aweso described the exercise as highly risky.
The exercise obviously is a high-risk operation So we need to make sure that all necessary fire cover. We're looking at the risks. There was a falling risk. There could also be any possible ignition, especially when there is leakage. And the process, anything can happen. So what we did was to deploy a strategy where we covered both ends, so as in case of any emergency, we'll be able to respond swiftly.
The tanker evacuation exercise required tact as the emergency team, led by DO3 Aweso, strategized to ensure the safety of all.
Initially, our operational strategy was to discharge the content into a new tank or tanker. However, we had some challenges because some power generation issues, so that delayed us a bit. So eventually we had to look for a crane with a higher capacity that will be able to lift the content whilst we provide the fire cover. So that's what we've been doing for the past 3 days. Normally, operation of the sort, we need space to work, and we are also looking at the general safety, especially the public. And when they are in the inner cordon, normally becomes a problem for us to be able to operate efficiently. So normally we have to assisted us in that direction for us to be able to have the space.
The team earned the praise of residents of Diapompo for the exceptional work done. For residents, there's no satisfaction as sleeping and cooking at home without hassle. They also commended Joy News for highlighting their plight.
We can afford some sleep today for the first time. We can also set fire and cook our favorite meals. Those residents who left town to take refuge in farms can now come home. In all these, we give thanks to the Almighty God and the Multimedia Group for the support. The problem persisted for over a week until you intervened.